at school yesterday. I fixed it, so now the lectures are supposed to be accessible. Otherwise, please get me. Yeah? Good. Today, we start with our second topic, recruitment and selection. So, you have so in mind the HRM cycle. And today we're going to discuss what kind of people do we need in our organization. But it's also very difficult to find the right fit for our organization, because maybe we want to change directions to have different products. For me, it's the same. I don't have a very loud voice, so please be so kind to shut up. Yes? Can you hear me in the back? Yeah? Okay, come in. Can you maybe shift a little bit when all the latecomers can oh, there? It's actually middle. Okay, thanks. So today's topics are recruitment, resource planning, what to do about training and career development, and there's also the competency management. So how do we get the right fit? Today we're discussing the recruitment and selection part, and it's linked with performance and appraising, and also with training and development. But first, how does the organization, can you stop please? How does the organization look at their staff? Do they see it as a possibility to make money, or do they see it as a cost factor? Well, that's the difference between the two. So when we choose new students, new employees, what do we need to know beforehand when we put out a recruitment and selection procedure, or even an advertisement? And what decision are we making on hiring people? Everything is based on strategy, on maybe prediction, how competitors are doing, and maybe, as we said, if you want to make a shift to do work more in an automatic way, you need maybe more technical stuff. This is from the CEO of Pepsi, or PepsiCo, and they say marketplace is changing very rapidly. So it means what they are doing is focusing, for example, on talent. Well, okay, it might be a good idea, because if you have talent, it means that at the end you can accelerate your business. But how do we get this talent in our organization? Because there are certain risks. They affect our organization, maybe in the short term, but maybe also in the long term. If you look here, yes, have a seat. Okay. Yes, it's nice. Profit drops by millions, so maybe we have to lay off people. Google has a lot of people from overseas, and maybe by the affected countries. So they are calling back their staff, but it means also maybe that they have to change their recruitment policy and can't hire people from those countries. Ford, maybe you heard of it, they had scheduled to build a plant in Mexico, and there were jobs for about 3 million Mexican people. So the companies over there were hiring people, but now everything is cancelled because of the policy of Trump. So it means but maybe opportunities for 700 other people within America. So the external factors do affect the way we have to deal with our employees in the organization. These are factors we think maybe they affect us in the short term, but of course they have effect on the long term. So besides this, we are depending on the supply and demand of the labor market. Maybe Ford says, okay, if we now are going to work within the United States, we are losing our competitive position because the workforce is far too costly, because the wages are higher than in Mexico. And so maybe Ford is not selling enough cars anymore in the future. So the demand is dropping, so then again they have to lay off people. So that are external factors. Internal factors are more based on what kind of people do we already have in the organization. What is their age? Is the diversity of people? It looks like the society we live in or not? And for example, also the diversity, how many male people are working there, and how many people are, for example, on retirement. So planning on that, we have to do that in the short term, or was I too quickly? Sorry, I'll put it back. These topics come back in a short version. Yes? In the back row, you have a question? You have a question? No? Okay. Good. So, to make your planning, it's important to think ahead as top management and as an HR department as well. Like we have to see which employees do we have currently in our organization. Then you have to think of, okay, what do we need on the short term, within 1 year, for example. And maybe you set out a strategy for, say, 3 years. And like I said, you're changing your product, or your way of producing even trips. And maybe that means that you need people with a different, with different skills. So you have to hire maybe also different people. So in short, planning influences, you try to predict the influences from outside. And why are you doing this? Because you would like to create continuity, at least to continue the same quality that you have within the organization at this moment, or maybe even improve the quality you have. And what you would like to do is, of course, keep the people in your organization as long as possible, because the recruitment and selection or hiring process is far more costly than keeping the people and trying to educate them within your organization and put them in sort of a career road. So at the points of interest we were talking about were demographic factors, distribution of men and women, diversity, level of education, and of course, again, the right persons on the right spot. And at this moment, Generation Y is, for most companies, a big issue. They try to get them in the organization, but they do not tend to stay very long in the organizations. For them, is a big challenge to keep them in the organization at the moment. So, the examples that I mentioned already, but you can think of baby boomers are retiring, and sometimes in some organizations, it's say 30% of your entire workforce. So if there is an outflow of 30%, it means really a lot of knowledge that you're losing. It's sort of a brain drain of knowledge that there is in the organization. Sometimes it's also good, but what do you get to replace them? So you have to think ahead, like, okay, that person is leaving in about 2 years, and who will pick up his task or his position? If diversity is known as one of the bless you, things within the organization that enhances productivity. So it means that if your organization has a larger diversity, then people tend to have the same people, the same type of people. It means that you lose your advantage in this respect. So you have to think of, when you hire people, where does this person fit in our team? Is it adding to value to the fact that we would like to have more diversity or not? If you look at traditional companies at the moment, these are figures from 2013, then you can see that white men are still on a lot of top positions, 68%, and only 3 multicultural women in comparison. So there's still a lot to do to have this swift. And like Noortje said on Tuesday, in this field of the field of tourism, we have more women, but still they're not on the top positions. They're still male there. So, how can we attract this candidate? How do we get her in our company? First of all, we need to know what she finds attractive. What are her characteristics? Where can we create her attention? Where do we recruit?
There are a lot of people out there, not to mention plenty of other people not looking, but would accept a new job if it were offered. And companies are competing against each other to get the best candidates. Many people are still going about this the old way, through job boards and job fairs, using headhunters to scout for talent. Newspaper classifieds, remember those? Or just plain cold calling. Basically the same thing they've done since the 60s. But the ambitious job hunters, the innovators, are going a step further to get a job. And they're using the internet. Well, to be specific, they're going to use social media. You see, a great resume is nice. But here's the thing. 60% of jobs come from networking. It's all about who you know and who knows you. Well, social media is a new, advanced way to network. And it's bringing people together at an alarming rate. It's growing faster than email, but many job hunters are now just realizing how useful this can be in their job search. So they're polishing their Facebook profiles, they're making professional connections on LinkedIn, connecting those connections to online job sites. They're sending out messages on Twitter, and those messages are going out to their friends and colleagues and friends of colleagues. And they're not just throwing themselves out there willy-nilly. You see, social networking has a weird way of getting the right information to just the right people. Savvy job candidates are using social media like it was a superpower. They've become super networkers. So the question for today's company is no longer, how are you going to get our attention? You should be thinking, how are we going to get your attention? You need to start accessing the same superpower to get your message out and connect yourself to all these potential candidates. And then once you connect to them, you need to start speaking the language of social media, using blogs and videos and such things, which will keep your candidates engaged throughout the recruitment process. So when it's time to hire, you can find the perfect person for your job. Is your company using the power which is social media? It's easier than you think.
people are recruiting at the moment. So they're using actually promotion tools that are used also with marketing to put yourself in the right spot as a company. So where do we get this team player? First of all, like we said, we need to know what are the characteristics of the person that we would like to hire. And very important when you think of competencies, is one of them is to be personal characteristics. Most companies say, okay, it doesn't matter, it's okay, nice if that person has a certain skill, but it has to be, that person has to have the right character, because characters you can't change. So that person, for example, has to be a team player or has to be communicative if we are looking for a person who needs to have that skill. So that's something that you have to put in your mind if you are recruiting as a manager a person for your department or for your team. Like we said, if you are going to recruit, as mentioned before, we are recruiting, for example, externally. We're going to use our network and we're going to use the right channel to recruit that person. If you, something stupid maybe, but if you're looking for voluntary workers who are going to work in a museum, for example, then you're not going to use Facebook. Well, maybe Facebook, but LinkedIn or Twitter, because you're looking for elder people. But if you're looking for volunteer work, for example, more in travel or building walls traditionally, or helping out families overseas, then you need these social channels. So it's very important to use the right channel to pick the right spot. Randstad, for example, they're recruiting every year, no, not every year, for every 4 years for the Olympic Games. And they have, of course, ladies on the back, please, last warning. They have the Holland Heineken House, and of course they need crew for that. So they set out an online and traditional recruitment policy to get the best. Their goal was to get the best crew ever. Of course they do that every year. And as you can see, they used a lot of channels. And it could be newspapers, but it could be also online digital possibilities. And what they measured also the way where did the people come from, and most of them through Randstad themselves, but still Twitter, 6.81%, is still a lot. Yeah, over is a lot. It means like coming through friends or just walk-ins or being asked by persons, so that's most of the time is a lot. But if you know which channel you choose, you try to measure as well, so for the next time you know exactly where to focus on. Okay, we recruited in through the right channels, but still we don't know if that person is also the right person. So we have to do recruitment, the selection, and finally. So we have to find out what capacity does that person have. And the higher the position, the more is done on assessment criteria. For example, people have to do a personality test or a competency test to show if they're really fit for the job, and also for future possibilities within the organization. The vakantielei, like we talked on Tuesday, they had to recruit 1,200 people every year. So you can't see them in person, it's too much. So sometimes they have to upload sort of a message, a motivation video, to sell yourself through a digital channel. So that's also a possibility to reduce the workload for the HR department, but also to have a very good insight in what kind of person do we have in front of us. Not only at this moment does that person fit in the organization, but also in the future. I talked about team player, but technical aspects, insights, etc. So getting back to Randstad, they started with 3,400 people that applied for the job. And as you can see, they have sort of a funnel, just with marketing. It's a little bit the same, where they put everybody inside. Then they made the first decisions on what we call hard criteria. For example, can you prove that you have international experience? Can you prove that you have the right qualifications? So they are measurable. Motivation is doubtable, but these are the hard criteria. And soft criteria, that are your competencies, like what kind of person are you? Do you fit in the, say, the orange team? Do you feel like, okay, the Dutch need to win on the Olympic Games or not? Can you adapt to the situation easily? Are you flexible? Can you present yourself really as a person who is promoting the Holland House and, of course, Dutch sports team? So that are the soft criteria and competencies that you have. And at the end, they went out with 275 crew members for the Holland Heineken House, and of course he said, well, they were supposed to be the best crew ever. But then, okay, Holland Heineken House is a temporary part. It's there for every 4 years. But what to do with the employees that you are recruiting? Think about the ones in the beginning with the goals like for 1 year or for 3 years. So it means that you have to think of like, what kind of person am I hiring? Am I hiring only for half a year, for 1 year? Or do we grant that person already a fixed contract? Or because I am a person, an organization dealing with seasonality, I only need people in a short-term period of time. Then, of course, another aspect, if I have recruited this person, how do I introduce the person within the organization? And we call this the socialization process. You find it also in Gomez. It's after hiring and selecting, there's the introduction. Introduction is very important because at that moment, the employee knows or learns more about the values and the norms within the organization. And it is also, if the person is given the right introduction in the organization, he tends to adapt quicker, learns quicker, but also has a more positive feeling about the organization. So that's why socialization is very important. Maybe think back of your own job, if or maybe in your future job next year, if you're going to do your placement. If they say, okay, hi, welcome, here's your desk, and start working, it's not a very nice introduction. But if they tell you everything and they help you out and you know where to go to if you have a problem, that's already very good introduction. So norms and values, but also learning the systems, etc. So that all gives you a clear impression of the job. Because once you're inside of the organization, we would like to keep you, to retain you, because hiring is very costly. What we just discussed so far on a row, and just for you to reflect, is that, well, of course, HRM department has to be very flexible, because we have to look into environment, what's happening over there, how do we act upon it. We have to think of the future. We have to think of what's inside our organization and human orientation, and we have to see the supply and demand question in the labor market. So that's all about external recruitment. But if we make certain choices in the HR or HRM department, they affect, of course, how we are dealing with it in our organization. For example, the use of the HR instrument. How are we using them? How much training do we offer organizations, employees? It tends to be more, also based on trends within the organization at the moment, but it used to be, no, not that much. And people who work as a one-person company, for example, they hired to do some work, they don't get training at all because they're not attached to the organization. So how can we retain the employees that we are recruiting or we recruited? Because, like I said, Generation Y, at the moment, the people who are as a new talent on the market, on the labor market, they don't tend to stay that long in the organization. So where to recruit, externally we discussed, but also we can recruit internally. And that means as an organization that you have to make arrangements within your organization. So you have to create career opportunities. If you are working currently as a junior product manager, you would like to become, of course, a senior product manager, or maybe even responsible for the whole department. So that means that you have to create a career policy, that it might be discussed during performance interviews, that you know, okay, if I'm going to work here, well, when you enter the organization, in 3 years, if I'm doing well, I can become so and so. So if you start as a junior, in 3 years, or maybe 1 year, if you're doing very well, I can become a senior employee. In order to know that, HRM and also the managers, with the help of managers, of course, need to invest to make an inventory. If they don't make an inventory, they don't know who's retiring, for example, which positions become available. And another inventory might be also the skills inventory. So what skills do people have? What do we need? Where do we need, for example, training? I'll come back to that later, because people who are currently in our organization maybe need to adapt new skills. So, planning versus performance interview. We are going to do a workshop. It's next week. And in that workshop, we're going to talk about performance interview and a little bit also about evaluation interview. It's shortly a fixed moment where you have a chat with your manager and we talk about your performance. And in this performance interview, it's a two-way conversation. We talk about future plans, and that's where the career growth and link comes in, because at that moment, if you have a discussion with your manager, you can create your personal development plan. Where would I like to stay in 1 year or in about 2 years? And at this moment you can make them realistic and make a plan and make progress by setting up trainings, etc. So, like we said, organizations have to arrange possibilities for career opportunities. And it depends, of course, on what kind of organizations there are. If you have, say, a very flat organization, there's only one boss and there are 4 employees, well, there are not that many possibilities to grow because the company is literally too small. But maybe you can have different tasks that are more interesting to you. If it's a big organization with lots of departments and a lot of possibilities and a big, maybe even training department like TUI, Thomas Cook or Kuoni, then they have most of the time also programs within the organization that you can go to and then follow certain programs or trainings. And if you can see, there's a business strategy, all is linked together. The HRM strategy is also linked to the general business strategy. So that's why, as a HR manager, you have to look at, okay, my organization is does need, for example, in the future more technical workforce. Data mining is one of the aspects. For example, they're looking for talents because they need to analyze all the digital information. That's why they focus more on e-business, etc. Also in your education at the moment. But because it's one of the trends, but also maybe one of the strategies, the HR department needs to scout for the right talent to fit in that strategy, because otherwise it's not going to work. So they are using this circle to discover, of course, this talent. Then they need to be developed, and there the career perspective comes along, and of course they are internally recruited. And at the end, of course, we want to have the best business success. So competencies, what do they play? What kind of role do they play? We talked about that already a little bit, so I'm a bit refreshing you on this part. So if you think, this was the performance and appraising part, so the performance interview, if you look back to the cycle. And we were talking about recruitment and selection. So where's the link between the two? If you discuss this, you're in your performance interview, and you said, okay, I would like to become in a managing position. Currently, I'm just an employee at a certain department. Then, of course, you need to be trained. Because when you're trained in time, then you can get the new position. And then we're back to recruitment and selection, so it's an ongoing circle. Everything clear so far? Yes? Okay, good. Or if I'm going too quick, then you have to say. I don't hear what you say. Okay? Good. So, training plays an important role within the recruitment and selection part. Because if you don't have the right staff, but through training, you can give them the right competencies and the right education, then you can fill in the positions. So that's also thinking ahead. Because if you lead it in three months and nobody's trained in time, you have a problem. What kind of trainings could you think of? Simple ones like on-the-job trainings. Maybe you're going to do that in the future, or maybe you already did. Somebody sitting next to you and is explaining, or you're watching in the beginning. And for example, e-learning, also some digital programs that you can do by yourself. And sometimes other people work with outside, for example. Yeah. Yes. One hand, only one. But they work, for example, also with e-learning program. Even if you are working in the stocking departments, you have to do the e-learning program, because then they know that everybody is doing, for example, putting the stuff in the racks in the same way in the shop, and everybody is handling the client in the same way. So it has an advantage as well, e-learning, because you can do it by yourself. And virtual reality, also one of the things that are being used a lot more. For example, how to handle aggressive situations. People who work in the police force, for example, they are watching a video and then they have to respond. And then they learn. So there are possibilities how to train. And of course they want to do it all mostly very efficient. Sometimes the whole team is going on a training, but then we're focusing on different things. For example, to get a certificate, but also, for example, the whole department needs to be more client-friendly, so then everything is focused on communication and how to certify the client. And also, trainings can be measured. So, if they subscribed, then they gain more knowledge. Do they change their behavior? And what are the end results for the company? So that are also options. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to say goodbye to people if they don't function very well. And sometimes sad things happen, they have an accident, or they retire. Sometimes they have a new job. What we see, like I said in the beginning with Generation Y, there are more people, they tend to switch jobs very often, and they don't have, say, the same loyalty like Generation X or Baby Boomers. They tend to stay very long in the same organization because of, for example, loyalty. But you could think of if you just had a baby, or traffic is such a hassle because every day you have to commute to work and it takes you 2 hours, that sometimes you say, sorry, I have to quit my job. What is important is always to have, as an HR department, to have an exit meeting. Because sometimes people say that personal aspects play a role, but it could also be that your manager is the personal aspect, or some colleagues are hassling you. So it's very good to know what's exactly going on to keep the record. And of course, forced by labor dispute conflicts. If you drink too much and you are in a driving position, of course, that's not very healthy, not for the passengers either if you're driving a bus. And people are functioning not well. Fraud, yeah, it happened. Just recently, even. I think it was a bus driver or something. But if you have an accident and you cannot fulfill your job anymore, that might be also a reason why you stop working with the organization. Well, ones, breaking off the relationship, voluntary, that are the easy ones. But if you're not dismissed on an easy way just because actions like Trump, where we started with, have effect, for example, on H&M, Hennessy and Maurits, and they have to lay off a lot of people, how is this being done? If you lay off by yourself, then you write a letter of resignation, that's the easy one. But otherwise, your boss has to apply for it, or the company has to apply for it. If there's some time, people try to find a new job for you. For example, you cannot do the same job anymore because of personal reasons or because of an accident. Then sometimes they try to find a new position within the organization or organizations that they're connected with. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you have more insights in recruitment and selection.